interrupt our program to bring you a special broadcast.
This is an MSNBC living history event, June 6, 1944, as it happened. Here again, Lester Holt.
And welcome back, everyone. I want to show you the front page of the New York Times, what it looks like today in a special 6 a.m. edition put out 12 hours after the start of D-Day. The headline, Allied armies land in France in the Havre-Cherbourg area. Great invasion is underway. I'm joined by our military analysts, retired General Barry McCaffrey. And General, right now it's approaching 10 minutes after 9 Eastern Wartime. That's about a little after 3 in the morning on the invasion beaches here. I'm astounded by not only the geographical size of the invasion, but the number of troops apparently all on shore right now. Is victory now certain? Is it a done deal?
It's the biggest thing that's ever happened in warfare. It's certainly enormous good news for the people of occupied Europe and certainly for our Russian allies. Lester, apparently we put 3 parachute airborne divisions ashore. 2 American divisions jumped well behind the beaches on the right flank of the invasion, the famous 82nd and the 101st. The British jumped the 6th Airborne Division and gliders on the left flank. And then 5 divisions came ashore at the same time, British, Canadian, and American. Lots of casualties. I'm hearing more than 10,000 casualties, but we are ashore. It's succeeded.
Those are sobering numbers, and we keep hearing that Omaha has been the bloodiest. Yeah. How far are they moving in at this hour, and is success still certain at that point?
Well, it's a confused situation, and this morning it didn't look good. U.S. Navy destroyers, thank God, came well inshore, had to use direct fire against German bunkers up on the high ground. The famous 1st Infantry Division, the Big Red One, took over 2,000 casualties, we believe, but they are ashore, and they're now starting to link up with the 101st Airborne.
We've heard about this infamous Atlantic Wall, and I want to bring your attention over to this mock-up here of what we believe that the Germans had put in terms of defenses along the entire Norman coast. Give us an example or help us understand what we're looking at here and what the Allies faced as they came ashore yesterday.
This famous German general, Rommel, the Desert Fox, fought in North Africa. 2 years ago, Hitler put him in charge of preparing the Western Wall here. They put a lot of obstacles in the water. General Eisenhower took a great risk, and the landing occurred at low tide. So a lot of these obstacles were exposed, very dangerous for the troops coming across open ground. These hedgehogs, angle irons, a lot of them had mines on them. So the Army combat engineers and underwater demolition teams have been trying to blow these things up on all the invasion bases. As you come up onto the beach itself, there were other mines and obstacles, barbed wire entanglements. The Germans, in many cases, have concrete bunkers that will withstand direct hits by large caliber.
Even some of that naval gunfire, the bombs didn't damage them.
Yeah.
All right, let me ask you quickly about how they came on shore. We know they came off the larger ships and onto these Higgins boats. That's just a troop carrier, essentially.
Well, it's almost a secret weapon of the war. I'm being told by the War Department more than 20,000 are going to be built. But this is a very small boat, Lester, 36 feet long, 10 feet wide, only takes 3 feet of water. So they can bring ashore a platoon of 36 American soldiers or a jeep and 12 soldiers.
Well, General, let me stop you right there because we've been working that part of the story today, the subject of the Higgins boats. We sent NBC's Mark Potter to New Orleans, where those boats are apparently made, to get a first-hand look at one of these crafts here in the U.S., and here's what he found.
What you are seeing is an extraordinary piece of military equipment that in recent years has changed the face of warfare and is now leading the charge in the Normandy invasion. This is a landing craft which brings troops from transport ships at sea directly to the shoreline. It's known officially as an LCVP, but everyone knows it as a Higgins boat. It's named after Andrew Jackson Higgins, the man who built and is currently mass producing these boats for the war effort at several factories right here in New Orleans. Now, what makes this boat so important is that it gives the Allies a strategic advantage in terms of mobility. This boat can land virtually anywhere on almost any beach in the world, and what that means is the Allies no longer need to worry about overtaking a heavily fortified harbor or deep-water port in order to put troops ashore. That added flexibility gives military planners an added element of surprise. Now, this boat has been used several times already in the war, first 2 years ago in the Pacific, also in the invasions of North Africa and Italy. Now let me show you a little bit about this boat. It's essentially a floating shoebox. It has a very shallow draft, and if you can hear this, you know that it is made out of wood. It's 36 feet long, 10.5 feet wide, and they can put as many as 36 infantrymen in here with their packs and their weapons and take them right to the shoreline and drop the iron gate. That moment is known as the gate to hell. As you can imagine, on the right end, this is a very uncomfortable trip. There are no places actually to sit down or to lie down, and in the choppy waters that we're hearing about in the English Channel, this is a very rough ride, and seasickness is a big problem. Overall, though, this is an important addition to the Allied arsenal because it creates a bridge between the ships at sea and the shoreline. And it's not hard to predict that if the Allies are victorious, historians years from now will say this was the boat that won the war. Mark Potter, NBC News, New Orleans.
All right, and we're back here with General McCaffrey. So those troops coming on the Higgins boats you mentioned were to link up with the paratroopers, which we've shown on the map here. Based on what we know at this point, has that link up been successful?
Lester, it's confused. They're all over the place. 101st Airborne primarily was going to hold open the beach exits for the 4th Infantry Division here at Utah, and the 82nd Airborne was farther to the east, a lot of them around St. Mary Glees. A couple of thousand casualties, a lot of them have drowned in flooded ground, but they're fighting fiercely, and they've terrorized and confused the Germans behind the beaches.
And we showed our audience a little bit earlier one of these clickers, Donna Friesen, who is embedded in Saint-Marie-Gly, said that the troops are using these to identify themselves, and were using them during the night to identify themselves, just a clicking sound.
Yep. There's a challenge and a password for all these forces that's classified, so I can't say it on air. But the parachute infantry battalions, lots of them are trying to identify each other in the dark. Remember, they were landing at 1 o'clock in the morning by clicking and having a response so they wouldn't shoot their own forces.
So there was a certain pattern. We're not giving away, but there's a certain pattern that they know in the field.
Exactly.
All right, General McCaffrey, thanks very much for helping us understand where things are at this point.
You heard a report from NBC in Washington. This is the invasion of Hitler's Europe.
What you've just seen is a glimpse into the way we in present-day television news might have covered D-Day if we'd had the chance. We hope our approach told you something you didn't know or moved you to find out more about the most important battle in modern military history and about the very brave and very human people who devised it and fought it. We took some liberties in style and format. We inserted ourselves into history. But we took no liberties with the facts. The details our present-day correspondents reported were true. The images you saw of soldiers and generals and world leaders were all authentic. Embed became a household word during the war in Iraq, but journalists have always been embedded in war. On D-Day, the photographer Robert Capa traveled with the first wave onto Omaha Beach. Martha Gellhorn stowed away on a hospital ship to cover the invasion from the ground. They have no shortage of modern contemporaries. NBC's Richard Engel reported tonight, not in fact from the shores of Normandy, but from Baghdad, where he's been covering the war in Iraq for most of the past year. When we come back, the grandchildren of the general, the president, and the prime minister. I'll be joined by Mr. Eisenhower, Mr. Roosevelt, and Ms. Churchill, together for the first time to reflect on their grandfathers and the history they made. When we return.
You've heard a report from NBC in Washington.
You're watching an MSNBC Living History event, June 6th, 1944, as it happened.